Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is not an easy bill. It's not an easy bill for me to carry, and I have a lot of mixed emotions about the bill. But I'm carrying this bill on behalf of a constituency that can't speak for themselves. A few days ago, I made a speech to a group of Republicans, and one of the in the audience asked me this question. They said, "Why do you all pass so many bills?" I said, I'm afraid that we're going to continue to pass more, because the more vile we become as a nation, the more laws it takes to protect us from one another and from ourselves. If people were good and decent, we wouldn't need new laws. But the truth is, we're all bent toward evil, and apart from our faith in God, we are all hopeless. The law is a protection, but it doesn't change the heart. None of us are perfect. I hope you don't think my carrying this bill gives me any reason to think I'm better than you or your opinion's more important than mine. This is a difficult subject matter, and we all have to, in the end, vote our conscience. But we all break the law. How many of you have kept the law that we passed 2 years ago that we would not text while driving? We've got 3 that have not texted while driving. But we're lawmakers. We make the law. The law is meant to protect us from ourselves and from one another. It points out our weakness and a measure of the moral well-being of the nation. The more vile we become as a nation, the more law is needed. 50 years ago, no one would have considered abortion as an alternative at all. 50 years ago, my grandmother would not even say the word sex. I mean, that's how different things are today. Countries, including America, that have had spiritual awakenings in the past have found that they need less law because people have a desire to keep the law. To those who say we shouldn't legislate morality and we should not get involved in this, I would say we constantly legislate morality, and for good reason. Just look at the bills that we've passed this year, and one can see how important legislating a moral code can be. Just in the Atlanta Journal this morning, we're passing a law to encourage teachers not to cheat. Who would have thought that we would have needed a law like that? This is the 3rd attempt at metal theft. We can't find a way to stop people from stealing. So we're going after the buyer. And enforcing these laws is becoming much more difficult. We passed a law this session on human trafficking of minors. Who would have ever thought in America and in Georgia that we would have needed a law to address the trafficking of little girls? We're passing sentencing reform, drug courts, spousal abuse. We passed a bill just maybe a few days ago that said the long-standing 200-year-old law that wouldn't require a woman or a husband to testify against their spouse, we're now saying, no, that's gone. When that law was established, I'm sure those that established it considered that the 2 became 1 and you couldn't divide the 1. Now we're dividing the 1. In fact, most marriages result in divorce. We passed a bill this session that dealt with so child molesters couldn't get CDL license. Well, folks, we legislate morality all the time, and we should. The question is, whose brand of morality are we going to legislate? I hope if you don't hear, if you don't hear anything else, listen to this. You have been given the authority and the responsibility to make the law. You're lawmakers. I will tell you that your responsibility is as great as that responsibility that Moses possessed when he came down the mountain from Mount Sinai to give the Israelites the 10 Commandments while they were worshiping a golden calf. The law you create today will affect 10 million people. The law that Moses gave only affected 3 million people. It's extremely important that you get it right. The 10 Commandments weren't specific. They did not take into consideration the degrees of murder. We have first-degree murder and second-degree murder and self-defense and accidental death. There's not anything specific in the Scriptures about abortion, because no one would have ever considered that you would take a child from the mother's womb. Only in modern times was such an act contemplated. There were those in biblical times that sacrificed their children. I remember I visited the city of Hatzor. It's an ancient city belonging to the Canaanites and the Amorites. When they excavated this city, which was several thousand years old, they found a little stone about so long that was an altar, and the purpose was to sacrifice children. And when we think about that, we say, how uncaring and out of touch could people be to sacrifice children? But we sacrifice children. We sacrifice children for not to propitiate the gods for a good crop, but for convenience and other reasons. Well, here we are today determining what the law should be concerning the taking of a child at 20 weeks from a mother's womb. The decision is made more difficult by the knowledge that science brings us. We know what a baby looks like at 20 weeks. We know that the baby feels pain at 20 weeks. We see them sucking their thumbs and responding to stimuli. We also know, because of science, that they have abnormalities. You're the lawmakers. You're the lawmakers. Today you must decide whether the practice of abortion should continue after 20 weeks. Children can help us know the truth. They see things in a more pure vision. Children's minds have not been corrupted by conflict or dilemma or evil, or compromise, or circumstance, or callousness, or just life in general. Our views are compromised when we've been through the tough things of life. I remember some years ago, the lieutenant governor was in the well speaking on an issue of right and wrong, where he's talking about Opie and Andy. Where Andy is teaching Opie the virtue of telling the truth. And he just bears upon Opie how you've got to tell the truth. And then Andy, when he was trying to sell his house, was fudging on the condition of the house. And Opie looks at Andy and says, but Pa, you're not telling the truth. Children can teach us the truth. I told the story in the well one day of my daughter. I took her down to the river where the Creek Indians used to live. And I said, baby, the Creek Indians used to be in vast number here, and here's how they lived, and here's what they did. And I said, and then she said, well, where did they go? I knew where they went. They went on the Trail of Tears. But I didn't tell her. I just said, well, it's a long story, baby, but somebody took them away. And she said, well, that wasn't very nice. And I said, no, it wasn't very nice. You know, kids can tell you the truth. Well, I thought about asking my daughter, who's 7 years old, what she thought about the taking of a 20-week-old child out of the womb of a mother and the process of doing that, to find out what her thoughts would be about that procedure and if she thought that was appropriate. But you know what? I couldn't bring myself to ask her that question. Why? Because I'm afraid it would have disturbed her. I'm afraid she would have said, Daddy, why do people do that? And I would not have had a good answer, except to say, we've let ourselves become oblivious to the fact that there are children that could be born in this world that are not allowed to be born. I guess one day she'll discover what's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, people believe the law. People believe the law. And whatever you make it, they will come to believe that that is right, whether it's a good law or a bad law. In 1972, 10% of the people believed that abortion was right and it ought to be legalized. 90% believed that it was wrong. But the court decided that it was right. So over the next 40 years, now 50% of the people believe that it's right because it's the law. The legislature back in 1972 could not have passed a bill like this. Not like this bill. They could have not legalized abortion in 72 because none of them would have gotten reelected because the people did not believe that this was right. But the justices decided it was right and it became the law. So I will tell you, whatever you make the law today, people will believe that it's right over time. House Bill 954 creates a legislative finding that there's substantial evidence that an unborn child is capable of experiencing pain by at least 20 weeks after fertilization. Moreover, the General Assembly asserts a compelling state interest in protecting the lives of unborn children from the stage at which substantial medical evidence indicates that they're capable of feeling pain. To that end, this bill prohibits abortion in cases which the probable gestation age of the unborn child has been determined to be 20 weeks or more, unless, and this is the unless, in reasonable medical judgment, the abortion is necessary for one of the two following reasons, and these are the reasons: to avert the death of the pregnant woman, or to avert serious risks of substantial and irreversible physical impairment to a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. What's not allowed is a claim of mental or emotional condition or that the pregnant woman will harm herself. Does not satisfy this provision in the bill. The second thing is to preserve the life of the unborn. Then the bill goes on to talk about the method of securing the life of the child, which is, frankly, unless that manner of delivery would propose a greater risk to the mother or to her health. And then the balance of the bill deals with the reporting to the Department of Community Health and the confidentiality of the doctor and of the mother. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.